No, so yes, just in case you hadn't noticed, viewer, Nick's
angle has changed.
and in higher clarity as well, high def now. But yeah, he's having issues, well, of all sorts, but including technical ones.
I need some slightly on my phone.
And he's not done yet.
You're screaming at me right now, so I'm just going to slightly. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you for putting up with the choppy nature thus far. So yeah. So we got a few more bits of business before we put this pitiful episode out of its misery. Yeah. So Vazquez did direct a couple of films himself based on his own works, including this one, Manaus, slave prison camp Manaus. It's also known as, and kind of. Have you seen Manaus by any chance?
No.
Right. Okay. I sense there's a greater delay than before. Now is that?
I have not.
This is going well.
Oh, great. Perfect. Christ almighty.
Right. Fuck, I don't know if I can be bothered. Anyway, yeah, he made a film called Manaus, and it's similarly in that kind of vein of being a trashy exploitation film, but kind of also having a bit more substance to it. It has a kind of a bit of a B. Traven jungle novel vibe to it, because it is about a kind of slave rebellion in Brazil, but also, you know, it's got lots of you know, kind of I quite enjoyed it. It's not a great film, but it's interesting. It's another example of what Figueora does, right? And I think that it's been a while since I saw Monty Hellman's Iguana, but I remember it being a pretty good film. I haven't read the book it's based on, but if I remember correctly, I think that's inspired by a Herman Melville short story. Like it's Melville inspired Figueora, and then Figueora was adapted for Hellman. So there's kind of like a lineage there, which is interesting to me, at least. Yeah.
I think I was going to say the thing that made me laugh the most was when the point at which I realized that Ebano had been made into a movie. I then did a bit of reading about the movie Ashanti, only to discover, well, it was directed by Richard Fleischer, right? Who did, you know, The Vikings and Soylent Green and a bunch of, you know, different movies. But Michael Caine is on record as saying, like, this is my worst film.
Right.
And when Michael Caine says that, you know, you kind of take notice, because he's made some terrible movies in his time.
Yeah.
I did watch it, and I don't agree. I don't think it's Michael Caine's worst film, but it's far from his best. I mean, I think the only redeeming factor probably is Jacqueline Bisset, I think her name is, the actress who plays Nadia. You know, she's good.
That can't be Jacqueline Bisset, right? Jacqueline Bisset is white.
Then I'm totally wrong. Then I can't remember. I can't remember.
Unless they change massively.
It's the black Jacqueline Bisset.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that sounds problematic. That Jacqueline Bisset in blackface.
So then, yes, then is Jacqueline Bisset? Why am I? Yes, no. Obviously, I'm wrong about the name. Anyway, whoever she is, she's really good. She's definitely the best thing about it. Oh, and Peter Ustinov plays Suleiman in basically brown face. So that's interesting.
Which character does Omar Sharif play? Does he play the Tuareg?
He plays the prince. He plays the prince, like the guy, and I think they expanded his role, the guy who tries to buy her at the very end.
Oh, okay. All right, interesting.
But there are other changes made. It isn't a direct, it's kind of, some parts are the same and some parts are not. But yeah, no, the main Arab slaver is played by Peter Ustinov.
Wow.
Which is, you know, yeah.
it's
pretty
fascinating.
broadly too.
Just to go off down another tangent, why the fuck not?
Sure.
I was just gonna. It's always fascinated me that period in Hollywood where you could have people, you know, white people in black or brown face playing alongside, you know, people of
actual
that
actors from those people. Yes,
and
yes, yeah.
Like I always wondered what it was like on set, like on the old Charlie Chan films or something, where you'd have like you know some Swedish guy in yellow face makeup and he'd be acting with genuine Asians or Asian Americans. Like, was it just another day at work? Like, yeah, that's perfectly. I guess it must have been, right? Like they must have just acclimatized and it. Like, you can imagine standing there, you know, with you know sellotape holding your eyes back, and your opposite. You'd be like, dude,
Yeah.
is this okay? Like, am I making you uncomfortable?
Yeah, I doubt the white actors cared one way or the other. I would imagine, and then I would imagine if you wanted to keep working, that you would have just kept your mouth shut if you were of any other ethnic persuasion in Hollywood at the time. You wouldn't want to be the guy making anyone else uncomfortable, right? Or you were going to get
but what
turfed,
I mean is,
I would imagine.
I think there's a limit to how furious, like physically, there's a limit to how angry you can be before your body gives up, right? Just for self-preservation.
Oh yeah, no, I think you would have. I think you would have just done what you had to do to make a living.
Yeah,
but it probably was weird to say the least.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, how did Colin Meaney do with having to act with Tom Cruise doing that like awful Irish accent in Far and Away, right? That must have been like being kicked in the balls every day over and over again.
Did you see the trailer for that new film with Christopher Walken doing?
No, but I would like to. Yes, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It was, you know, it's a strange book. As I said, it's neither fish nor fowl. It's right. A weird curio to me. But yeah, it was interesting enough that I would be interested in reading more. And he clearly has a great love for the subject and for the geography that comes through loud and clear.
I think so. I genuinely as well. I even if it might sometimes be you know, he might misjudge a few things. I sense that it's coming from a place of someone genuinely trying to understand, or you know, to come to terms with something, or you know, just genuine fascination and respect. I think. I mean, it's difficult sometimes to think that, you know, like you were talking about some of the broad stereotypes, but I think it's more misjudged than it is racist or
right. Okay.
Would you agree with that? Like, it's more of a
yeah.
Rather than you get angry at it.
Yeah. I don't think. Yeah. No, I don't think there's any deliberate. I would say more. It's just a product of its time and a product of its genre, maybe. Right. That you kind of, when you write an action film, you tend to, or write an action novel, you tend to paint in broad strokes. You know.
Yes. And it's
right. So
people talk about you know, the woke era and all that, and you know, and sometimes I think it's overemphasized, but it's slowly dawned on me recently that almost imperceptibly, without us noticing it, maybe, or I didn't notice it, we definitely have in the past, I don't know, 20 years or something, let's say, we've definitely crossed over into a new area, I think, of cultural understanding and understanding of cultural misappropriation, where, you know, I look back at things in my own lifetime, and you think, fuck, really? Did we do that? Like, that was acceptable? And it's genuinely a surprise.
Oh, yeah.
Like, wow, I don't remember I don't remember the meeting where we all decided that's not cool anymore. But we seem to have just reached it at a, you know, naturally.
Well, you may know that our prime minister here in Canada, who I have had lunch with some years back, when he came to visit the reserve I was working on, I got in trouble for there being numerous pictures of him in blackface, and he's younger than me. First of all, he's younger than me, and it wasn't just one. And at one point, he was asked directly by the media, like, "So how many pictures are?" And he wouldn't cut. He wouldn't even guess. He was just like, I wouldn't want to say because there could be more, basically. And yeah, and in fact, going through my old school yearbooks here from high school, actually was when my sister's husband, my brother-in-law, who is from Carlow in Ireland, he was here, and for some reason my sister was like, yeah, pull out the old school annuals and we'll go through, and we were looking at pictures of my brother and me and my sisters when they were, you know, in middle school and high school. And he kind of stopped. I was like, hang on. And there was all these photographs again from Halloween dances of white Canadian teenagers in full blackface and Afro wigs. And this is 1991, 92, 93. And it's every year. Like there's different kids every year in those pictures. And I was like, yeah, that happened. That was a thing.
And that's the thing. It's not.
And then
it's not to say, oh, all those teens were racist. It's obviously just misguided more than anything else. But it's funny. Now you wouldn't even.
In my high school, that might well be the case.
But let's say even for the ones that weren't,
to be perfectly honest,
even for the ones that weren't, I mean, you know, nowadays there'd just be a certain sense of comments that you'd just be like, no, maybe we'll go as Spider-Man instead. That might be, you know, like you wouldn't even consider it for more than a few seconds, right? So it's fascinating that things have changed so quickly.
But again, so what you just said about the you know, those old movies from the 30s, you know, consider the fact that we had one African Canadian girl in my grade. She was in my class, so she would have gone to a school dance and seen people dressed up as her race. How weird and uncomfortable must that have been? I can only imagine.
Or you know, maybe it's changed for everyone in a way. Like, not to say that it wouldn't have been uncomfortable for her, but also because it was more I don't know if acceptable is the right word, but it was just more normalized. Maybe at the time she would also be less furious about it, just because these people are doing this all the time. I guess
we'd have to ask her, I guess.
Yeah, and now do you know what I mean? It's like I think it changes for everyone in a way, not just the people, you know, not just the perpetrators. I guess the victims also. Their perception also changes, right? And you demand a certain amount of representation or So I have one more shout out. This is something I don't think you have, right? But I just thought it was worth mentioning.
No.
Battling Britons, classic British war comics. And this is a review special. So for those of you who don't know, British war comics used to be a thing.
Yes.
Still are to a certain extent. I was surprised reading this, actually. I didn't realize Commando is still going. And basically there were two kind of versions. There were two types of war comics, right? There was a short-lived kind of weekly anthology periodical. There were a few like Battle and Warlord, and these were about the same time as stuff like Action and 2000 AD and comics like this, right? And I have to admit, I hadn't read so much of that stuff. I was more familiar with what were called the Pocket Library series. The three big ones: War, Battle, which was different from Weekly Battle, and Commando. And they were like, I don't know, what size would they be? Like, kind of like that. Like pocket-sized war comics, and they weren't anthologies. They were like a story per little pocket book, and they'd be released, I don't know, 4, 6, or maybe 8 titles a month, right? There was actually quite a lot of them. I mean, eventually thousands of them, right? So this is basically a guide to those, with some of the weekly stuff thrown in as well. And it's got, I suppose, the most famous thing that's become a classic is Charlie's War, right?
Yes, yeah. Pat Mills.
Originally in, I don't know, Battle or Warlord or one of those comics, right? And it was then later collected and is now considered, you know, a classic graphic novel, right? But did you read a lot of these when you were a kid? Because I read a lot of the pocket, like for whatever reason, an older brother or my dad maybe had a stack of them in the attic. So I grew up reading a lot of these.
Not a huge number. Like, I do remember some of those. I don't think I ever read the kind of the weekly, kind of the ones that would have looked like 2000 AD, that kind of the more magazine size. But I do remember having some of those kind of thicker digest ones. But
yeah.
But it wasn't a huge thing. And it's funny, you think it would have been, because, you know, I was obsessed with like Rambo and kind of like, you know, the whole idea of like we were digging pit traps, you know, with like spikes smeared with our feces and stuff.
Right.
Maybe not but, you know, but up behind our houses in Wicklow, you know, like there was like covering them with like, you know, sticks and grass and stuff, hoping some hapless fool would fall in.
Right.
You know, everybody had that Bowie knife with the kind of compass in the, you know, in the back, and, you know, matches, all that stuff. So yeah, but I don't, when it came to reading, I was always, I think, more attracted to science fiction and fantasy, whether it was in comics or in books, than I was to straight war. I can remember my older cousin Andrew reading stuff like Stalingrad, like, you know, these big fat serious World War II books. But what I was just thinking now was like, as time went on, because all of that stuff when I was a kid was mostly about World War II, World War One.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd have a story here or two about Korea, and maybe because of the whole Vietnam boom at the time, you might have started seeing some. But like, if those, you know, comics are still being published, did they just keep up with the wars? Did they have stories about Desert Storm? And did they have, you know, at what point does it become more problematic or uncomfortable, you know, to still be doing straight-laced action heroic stories about wars, that are less and less clear in their morality? And World War II is a really easy one, right? We can, unless you are a torch-carrying Nazi from Charlottesville or whatever, most of us agree, like, yeah, the Nazis were bad guys, and, you know, whereas things get much more murky,
right?
You know,
but even
to now we get.
Even in those wars, I mean, you still do have, you know, pockets of gray, you know, like, you know, Dresden and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
and these comics, as far as I know, I mean, in my reading of them when I was younger, never. I mean, they are fairly jingoistic, and I suppose the better ones were not necessarily more well balanced. Having said that, there was a surprising amount of these that came from the point of view where the protagonist was German. I mean, there were actually quite a lot of stories where they were, you know, the kind of non-SS Wehrmacht kind of, you know, good old German soldier who was just following orders, but you know, wanted to assassinate Hitler in Valkyrie and all that kind of stuff, right? So there was actually, I suppose they did make a concerted effort to see things from the other side, and yeah, sometimes they just, if it was a men on a mission story, they didn't take any, it was just that they concentrated on the action and heroics and you know, the mechanics of it, rather than any political kind of. And I suppose it depends on how problematic you find in general war as entertainment, you know, like I can't imagine the modern parents in Viz, for example, being too keen on their children reading Commando picture library, right? just the entire concept of war as entertainment.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But I just wanted to bring this up just to tell people it's out there. So this is edited by Justin Marriott, and it's part of his paperback fanatic empire. So basically, Justin Marriott's a British guy, and he's been publishing actually a number of zines devoted to a love of paperbacks and paperback fiction, vintage paperback fiction mostly. And his flagship zine is Paperback Fanatic, but he's also got a bunch of spin-offs now, including where there's this one and there's a few other. So this is all about war comics, but there's one all reviews special about post-apocalyptic fiction, and he has there's Hot Lead, which is all about westerns, and there's Monster Maniacs about horror zines and horror comics, and Sleazy Reader, Men of Violence, all about men's adventure paper, all good stuff. And for the past couple of years as well, they've all been print on demand. So previously you had to be a subscriber, and it was really hard to find back issues and stuff. But now it's print on demand. So I would recommend either search out Battling Britons and then click on Justin Marriott's author page, or just search for Justin Marriott and you'll have all his stuff up there. And a lot of the stuff from the older pre-print on demand stuff has been reprinted as well in like best of volumes. And Battling Britons and pretty much anything Justin Marriott is involved in is well worth reading if you're a fan of all this stuff, right? So I just wanted to give that a shout out because including yourself, Nick.
Sure.
I think
I will definitely
you would dig this as well, right? Because
yeah, absolutely. And definitely the issues of Paperback Fanatic I read when I lived in Japan, the ones that you lent me, were all hugely edifying. Like they were fun to read, but also you ended up with a piece of paper right next to it, writing down the names of things to try to find. What's actually it's also maddening because there are things you're like, I'm never going to find this. Like I've been searching for the book that Fernando de Leo's
The Boss.
The Boss is based on,
right?
Because I had no idea it was based on an English language book, right? I would have just assumed it was based on an Italian pulp book or something. And I've never successfully found a copy of it. So
right.
Although I guess I probably could dig deeper and spend more money, I guess.
Well, that's the thing, if you can find some of the stuff as well. I mean, Justin Marriott's fandom will destroy your bank balance.
Right.
Just bear that in mind. But then again, I mean, it's surprising how much stuff now, Ebano, for example, just to bring it back around, Kindle of Ebano will set you back, what, $3, $4, something like that?
Yes, that's true. That's true, yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff getting reprinted now. And I understand, it's nice to collect this stuff. It's nice to have the artwork and everything. But for me, primarily, it's about actually reading the fucking things, right? So if getting an old paperback is going to cost me $1,000 as opposed to, 2 or 3, I'm going to go
for the Kindle,
and just download the artwork from online, right? I mean,